programs that we'll be adding in, such as our additional EAT program in Sunrise, potential additional growth that we have in the North End, and then the unknown special ed needs that we know is continuing to grow year to year.
Are we adding an EAT?
Excuse me, in North Shore Primary Center. So those are the
Why are
three
we
or four.
adding another EAT program?
With the changes in the highly capable law, we're seeing an increase in the number of students that are qualifying for highly capable services.
They can't stay at their home school?
They can, if they choose to. But if they don't choose to, then we have to accommodate them, and so that might mean opening up potentially 4 additional EAT classrooms. We don't have space at Shelby.
I'm sorry, we have to, or it's not like a, I mean, so if it's offered in their home school.
It's not, it isn't in all the home schools,
So
that's the issue.
Oh, I thought
if
we
we
had
had
to offer it in the
if we had a district-wide model where all students receive highly capable services in their home school, that would be different. But because we have a model where they have choice, right, they can choose to stay in their home school, and then we have to serve. But because we offer the choice model of an EAP program, as many people opt into that and qualify, we have to accommodate that.
Will we be changing that offering in 2017?
I don't know. I don't believe it's part of our conversation, but I don't know that we have any firm decisions on that.
So I think the 2015 that I'm seeing makes most sense is the one that we talked about last time, now that we decided on a task force, and that there's a lot of moving parts to shifting start times for elementary and all the different impacts, is the shuttle option, or now we're the regional metro option. So maybe we could, I'd like to speak to that because I think that's the one that I'm probably personally, if I'm voting, think is the most feasible.
Why don't you go ahead and express yourself on that?
So I don't want to repeat everything I said last week, so I think you guys know pretty much where I'm at with that, is that I think since we're moving in short, since we're moving towards 7 periods, that's the goal of the district, then by adding more classes, offerings than we could offer later start to students, and I think we need to do that at Inglemoor also. And we're already doing it at Bothell, Woodinville, Inglemoor, we're offering 7 periods, so it would be making more classes available. And I think, Larry, last time you said potentially 10 classes is what we could do.
Right, so our planning right now is to try and add a 1.0 FTE, which would be 5 additional classes at each of our 3 high schools. So that would bring them all to 10 or 11, potentially 12 7th period classes. Now again, our operating theory has been that we're trying to expand 7th period options for students who actually want to take 7th periods, not 6. There are, however, even at Inglemoor this year, there are, of the 130 or 150, 170, 17 of the 170 students who take a 7th period class are in a 2 through 7 schedule. But the rest of them are in a 1 through 7 schedule.
It's a little unique though, because it's IB and they basically have to be in 7 classes, correct?
That's a large part of the driver for that.
Different than Woodinville and Bothell.
Right, and I don't have this statistic. Do we know Woodinville, Bothell, how that compares?
They have very few on the 2 through 7 schedule. I don't know the exact.
So again, most of them that are accessing the 7th period are accessing 7 classes. However, it would be, with more 7th period classes offered, at least marginally, if we are able to add that FTE, that would potentially increase the opportunity for some students to opt for that schedule. We would need to do that, I think, carefully. I think what we've modeled and presented would be a single shuttle bus with about, regional with about 50 student capacity in Bothell and Inglemoor service areas, greater capacity with 2 buses in the Woodinville service area, but driven more by the geography of Woodinville than by sort of any program preference for Woodville.
So Amy, I want to thank you for putting together the document you did, because I think you summarized essentially what many of us had brought up. So recognizing that people would have the choice for 2 through 7, at least I believe we're acting in good faith towards our resolution, and the point made that we will try to do incremental steps without making huge program changes, getting to a goal where we want to get to with 7 periods. And as I heard Ken say, we've increased our budget by $25 million over 2 years, and the $200,000 approximately that it would cost us in operational costs is about 1% of that $25 million. So though it sounds like a big number when you're looking at what the total transportation cost, the incremental cost is approximately that, which is about 1%. And of course, that's much less than what our total overall budget is. So, and I think that I saw in there that we might have to buy 2 buses, but I think we're looking to buy buses for when North Creek High School opens anyway, and we do have that money in a separate fund that's earmarked. So that's, I don't think I had anything else on that, but I'm sure other people do.
I had a question. I commend you for the amount of work you put in on this shuttle option. That's great, and meeting with Larry and Ryan. One of the things that concerned me on what I had come to me was a fee.
So this was my, yeah.
And I
So this was my idea, was that literally after I was driving home, we're thinking about the meeting last time, about, you know, Kimberly's points about putting together shuttle for a new AAP, and Ryan talking about how hard it is to plan when you don't have specifics. And so what was going through my head is to do a pilot, but because we have so many unknowns, if you don't know how many folks want it, you run the risk of turning folks away. So I thought, well, if we have a fee for parking, and we certainly, if we're having these 2 through 7 scheduled students, you could increase the number of students parking at our high schools, and at the high schools it's already super tight. So perhaps if you're gonna ask someone to say, okay, if you're interested in the shuttle, you know, please sign up so we know who you are and where you live. But what if people just put their name down and then don't use it and take a spot away from someone else who really needs it? So my thought was, well, if we did a fee that's only a fraction of what a parking fee is, it's a good deal. And then really they're committed to using it and they're not taking a spot from someone else. And this is when my thought process, the funnel was this big, and so that's why I shot it off, first of all, to Larry and Janet so they could throw it in the board briefing so people could think about it too and make sure I wasn't crazy. And then luckily I did give Ryan time to see, because that would be their basic transportation. OSBI says we can't charge a fee. But that's where I was coming from. I just didn't want someone to take a spot if we run out of spots and not use it and turn someone else away.
Okay, so that was my understanding. We can't charge a fee, so.
Well, and which I had no idea.
I'm glad to hear that you went through that process of
Yeah.
finding that out. And I would be opposed to charging a fee for it anyway. Just
Since
because
it's
it is
basic.
basic.
And I thought, you know, maybe we could, if folks are on free and reduced lunch, we could leave it. You know, the point was, I don't know, and it's not going to work anyways. I was just worried if we're going to run out of space on these shuttles. I hate for someone to sign up and then not use it. But we'll just go,
So
go from here.
are there other differences? Because that's what I had to work off of. Is there a difference, or did we get it in here and I didn't see a revised version?
No.
Is it different from what we have here?
No, not at all, just the feedback, and I haven't done anything with it since then. What I did is when I got home after the meeting, I pulled up the information about the AAP program to try to find information about the shuttles, and there's a form. Folks have to fill out a form and request a spot on the shuttle, and that's when my little light bulb went off. It's like, well, there's the information transportation needs. They know who is on the shuttle and where they live, and they can plan their routes, and they have numbers, and that's when I kind of went from there. But nothing else. After the communication you saw.
Okay. So are you in favor of that idea?
I am in favor of the idea, and another point I put in, I think having a pilot, I mean, it's unfortunate that we have no idea what Olympia's going to do with our funding, and we have to be very cautious about rolling out a shuttle and the driver rolling out seventh period options, because we don't know really what we're getting from Olympia this fall. But at the same time, it would give some data to the task force about what people might need in terms of transportation options. Perhaps even though it's limited and we'll have to communicate that well, it would still be a nice pilot program that we could learn off of.
If we're going to call it a pilot, though, I think we have to set it up where there's going to be research conducted. Is that correct, Larry?
I'm sorry.
If we were to call it a pilot program, don't we need it set up where then we are gathering the data and the research?
I don't think we, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't think we would strictly need to do that. I mean, I think what I was gathering, Amy's desire to call it a pilot was to make it clear that there wouldn't necessarily be an ongoing commitment to maintaining the shuttles in subsequent years if it turned out that the demand for them wasn't sufficient, or
Right,
if
and
there was
once we
other,
get to 2017, we may have a different solution.
right, or if there were other problems associated with them that were difficult to navigate.
But
So my assumption is in 2017, we will have a different solution, or perhaps they'll incorporate that. But I would like the data from it retrieved and looked at, especially for the task force.
And Kimberly, since you know so much more, like even just anecdotal information that perhaps staff from buildings could give, I mean, would that be enough to call it a pilot? You know, if office staff could let us know how the registration for it goes, and we get feedback from families. I mean, how formal of a structure do you
Well,
need?
you were saying that you wanted the task force to be able to use it, so I think if we were going to have them use it, we probably need someone, whether it's in our community or not, to do more of a formal analysis of it.
Well, I think, we would have very ready access to how many students are utilizing the service, how many students are opting for a 2 through 7 schedule.
Right times.
So I mean, I think we
have data.
we could look at how that might change throughout the year. That was one of our experiences last year, although we were fairly late in bringing 7th period options to the table for Bothell and Woodville. More students initially expressed interest and then discovered that for a variety of reasons, a 7th period class wasn't going to work for them, either because of their after-school activities or work or sports schedules or whatever it may be. So, I mean, I think looking at how that might change throughout the year, particularly around semester, do more students opt in or opt out, I think we can definitely track all of that.
I think it would be good to communicate to the high schools too, so they can communicate to the students that they do have the option for later start. So that, especially at Inglemore, where they might not be aware that that'll be an option because they're not in the IB program.
So just as a reminder, through the registration process right now, we're asking students that question. So it's a little bit disconnected from the availability of transportation, and that obviously might change some students' responses, but we are asking students at all 3 of our high schools what sort of their general schedule preference would be. So we're at least starting to get an idea, again, of how many students might be interested potentially in a 2 through 7 schedule. But again, our experience last year is a lot more students were interested than were able to really make that work personally as it got closer to actually happening for them.
Or all the classes full.
I think we had a few classes at Bothell that we didn't even open up until 2nd semester. It was pretty late last year. And it was.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said it changed in 2nd semester where they decided they didn't want the 7th period.
No, what I was saying, that was some of the data we could look at next year. I mean, as we look
I
at.
thought you was, okay, I
So-
misunderstood.
Our students who are in a 7th period, 1st semester, do they opt to stay in that schedule 2nd semester? Do more students opt to move into that schedule 2nd semester? That's all.
What you're finding now is more students were opting to stay. We're opting for it 2nd semester that didn't choose it for 1st semester at Bothell.
No, I'm saying we didn't get some of the classes launched, 7th period
Time.
classes launched until 2nd semester.
And as I'm understanding the shuttle, it's just the morning. Is that what you're understanding?
No.
Because if it's both morning and afternoon, then how do you offer shuttle to the students choosing 2 through 7 and not 1 through 7?
I didn't understand it that way.
I didn't understand it that way either.
Yeah,
So we're offering an AM and a PM.
okay.
However, it needs to be the selected 50 kids or however many
Kids who
we
sign
can
up.
transport that will sign up, and they'll be given some type of barcode or something that we can track.
Don't implant it in their head.
So we'll give them something.
Sticker on their ID
Um,
card.
50? 50, is that the size the bus carries?
That's the size
Is
of
that-
the bus, at least
So
for
one bus.
the high school kids. Yes.
So then my question remains, I mean, how do you provide transportation for 2 through 7 and not 1 through 7? You're transporting the students home at the end of the day, 7th period, if they opted for 2 through 7, but you're not transporting them if they opted for 1 through 7, because there isn't capacity, right? So how do you do that?
So a student who's taking 1 through 7 for first period, they would ride the regular bus in the morning. And then currently, students who take 7th period now have to provide their own transportation. So this might open up the possibility for some of those students to instead get on the shuttle. But that's going to have to figure into the overall mix of the number of students the shuttle can accommodate.
So I heard that there's currently 170 students at Inglemoor participating in the 7th period, doubling the number of classes. I imagine that number would increase for next year. How would we decide who are the
That's my question.
lucky 50 that would get the bus and the other 150, 200 kids that don't?
Well,
So it's a pilot, and therefore the 50 that signed up to be coming in 2nd period would be the 50 that left in 7th period.
You're doing it as a pilot.
So we're prioritizing the kids that are choosing 2 through 7, the ones that need the 7th period or accessing the 7 period day, don't get access to the shuttle? Is that what we're
Maybe
saying?
that's a separate
We're
vote.
not giving them,
That's your
That
preference,
now.
is we don't give them that shuttle?
well, we're not giving them that now.
No,
No,
but we
but
would
we're
then
not
be
giving it to
introducing
the
a
2nd
shuttle.
through 7 students
Right.
now either.
I think it's just a pilot, and at least it gets that movement toward a later start time.
I appreciate that, but I'm pretty uncomfortable with that being the prioritization. I think there needs to be a more equitable, perhaps lottery or something, system.
But I think that was part of Amy's idea, is that
Yeah, for-
having incorporating a fee sort of sifts out the serious
Right.
kind of on the front end, and then I think you also suggested that there might need to be some kind of lottery if demand was in excess of capacity.
So I hear what you're saying, and I would agree with you, Sandy, that yes, we don't want to be inequitable. And I think this is all just coming before us right now, because I hadn't heard any discussion about this at our previous meeting, so we probably weren't all aware that, oh, what about busing all the kids who don't choose the 2 through 7? So, but I'm wondering if we want to get good data, and we really want to see what are the impacts of later start, who's choosing it, becomes problematic, I think, if we now are mixing the kids who would normally choose 1 through 7 with the kids who are choosing this for later start. So I think we're talking two different things here. If we want to do it as a pilot study or however we want to call it, we should probably keep it separate and only say, we're just doing this as a pilot program, we need to get good data, we're offering 2 through 7 transportation. Otherwise, we could go with the other way and do it as a lottery, but then I don't really think it's a pilot.
Although we might with the before 2nd period shuttle, that run, that would be only for the 2nd through 7th kids. We might get some information there. I mean, I think, and that was my very bottom line, I think as we go to more 7th period options, there's going to be more and more requests for this, because they're going to be, however that ends up working out, it's entirely possible we might need some other transportation options besides what we have. And the lottery isn't perfect, especially with only 50 spots. But if we're very upfront about it, and if there's a 2nd through 7th option already in the Inglemoor community, and then we can say, okay, we'd like to try other transportation options. We're sorry, it's only one bus right now. But we want to see what the demand is. It's not like we're instituting 7th period options all of a sudden in Inglemore and then having a very reduced capacity of transportation. At least there is some history of folks figuring it out.
So you're hearing this tonight because I was trying to envision how this would work. How could we do a shuttle? And this was just one question that came up in my mind. Well, how do you prioritize
That's a
then
good question.
1 through 7 when and the things that are in conflict in my mind are, we are on the one hand trying to expand offerings so that students have access to 7 periods a day, but on the other hand, we're saying, we're not going to provide you transportation. We're going to provide transportation for this 2 through 7. So I think if that's the choice that we make, it has to be really clear that's an intentional choice. If it's not the choice we make, that's pretty muddy. And one example of unintended consequences, I think. So my position is that we need to know what we're doing. This feels a lot like firing before we are actually aiming sometimes, so it's...
So all we're doing is offering transportation, 1 bus, that's what we're adding, and we're gonna be adding more classes, but what we're adding is a bus and a route. So it's not like we're changing the whole system. We're actually adding something to enhance students, not take away from them by adding a bus. And like you said, there's going to be consequences now to some of the students not being able to use that bus. So that seems to me what the issue is. But I don't think, from where I sit, that saying, oh, we're not going to add the bus now makes sense. Because we can probably figure out a way right now. Do we do a lottery? Do we call it a pilot program and say we're just doing this next year? We want to see what our ridership is and how many people choose 2 through 7. I mean, I think we have to be specific how we're going to do it, but I don't see it as this huge barrier, but we need to figure it out.
Any other thoughts?
I'd have
in
to for all the
general?
students, but I don't think that's going to go over very well. Probably costs too much money.
Especially when you don't know demand. At least this would
I'm
get us
trying to
at least a year, right? Because it is in the task force's scope to study options for 2016 as well.
Right.
So this would give us a year of seeing what the demand is. I think it would be, I would be in favor of leaving it up to the building principals if they want to offer the 7th period shuttle to 1 through 7 and 2 through 7. I mean, because again, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this is not a bad thing to test anyways. But I'm in favor of not having that be a level of detail for the board to decide. I would just reiterate that we have to communicate well, and I'm willing to help doing that. That this is a test. This is just a test.
And we're going to collect the information from this pilot for
Give it to
the
the
task force. There you go.
Are there any further thoughts on any of the options? Sounds like we're really settled on the shuttle option or nothing yet. Those are the only 2 things that we're really discussing seriously. Is that correct?
I remember everyone's reaction over flipping junior high and high school. We certainly heard from a lot of people, and further information, thank you very much, this evening about that, or afternoon, evening. And so I wouldn't be interested in moving that one forward. Would you like to make a motion for the shuttle idea, since it was your idea? I think that that's the most viable option.
It's technically Kimberly's idea, but if we have more to discuss.
Do board members have other?
Well, I'm getting increasingly, I actually came in more in favor of 3, but now I'm increasingly uncomfortable just because there are too many unanswered questions. I definitely think expanding your 7th period course options is a direction we need to go, and I've been very vocal about that for many years now, because it provides choices for kids. They could choose 2 through 7, but it also gives them a 1 through 7, that 7-period day. And with 24 credits coming, starting next year, we can't have our 9th graders in a sea of despair a year from now, because it's already hopeless for them that they will not be able to graduate on time. And so I really think that we need to be increasing that option. I am on the AAP mailing list, and I know that it was done quickly last year, and I know that we had to do it, but it has not been without hiccups. There have been issues with this transportation, and that was required by law for us to do. I'm concerned that if we rush this program pilot forward, it has the inevitable hiccups, that because there's so much controversy about trying to do this in 2015, that it will become a negative. See, we told you not to rush this, you've screwed it up, now we don't trust you to do this correctly in 2000. I just am worried about that possible. We've got so many questions that are coming up tonight that we have not thought through. I just worry that if we don't have those answers, we don't have equity, that this could come back to bite us in a way that we don't want it to.
President?
Is there a, we are 5 of us in favor of later start time for high schools. I think that's an excellent place to be, and we'll get there. We'll get there, and by no later than 2017, that's a real positive. I think that's movement from where we've been for years. So I see that as a really positive movement. I would actually be in favor of looking at this shuttle option for 2016, because a couple of things. There might be an option for just a morning bus that would work better. I mean, if we're talking real equity, maybe the 2nd period delivery would be an option for that year. I don't know. Maybe it's something that we can expand. I mean, maybe there are things that we haven't thought about, that just like what I thought of this weekend as I was thinking about this issue. I just feel like we are not operational and tactical people, and we are trying to do operational and tactical work on the fly. And like I said, it feels a lot like shoot, aim, plan. And I just don't think that that's a really good method of doing business. So I would love to see this entertained as a possibility for 2016, because I think it has some real good potential.
So are you asking to get a task force together for 2016?
We have the task force.
But not to make a decision for 2016, because I think that's for 2017. Is
No, the task force does both. The task force, yeah.
The task force is scheduled to do both for 2016 and 2017.
Right. So they're going to be examining the issue.
Can I ask a question? Because I totally hear the equity question. Totally, 170 kids already doing 7th period is a lot of kids. Absolutely hear that. I know we're running out of time, but when are we expecting that information back? That when we're asking who might be interested in it, 2nd through 7th, I wonder if there's any way we can test demand earlier rather than later for the bus before we commit to doing it.
So we should have that data by the end of the month. Schools are currently in the registration process right now. The data is going to be a little bit incomplete, however, because right now the question is being asked absent any transportation option.
Right. I'm trying to think if there's any way, because it's true, if we had to turn away 120 students, that would not be a good outcome. But we're talking juniors and seniors who might be driving anyways, because the IB program is juniors and seniors, so the demand for the shuttle might not be as high as we think.
Well, but it's not just IB kiddos, and it's Woodinville and Bothell, and it's kiddos that are accessing 7th periods so they can graduate on time.
Mhm. It's a pilot.
And I want to clarify. We're adding more periods we're adding more 7th period classes to all 3 schools either way.
Right.
That is our goal. We are programming that into our budget planning for next year, not knowing exactly what our budget's going to look like for next year, but assuming that there's going to be capacity to do that.
So we're not shooting, aiming, and firing that piece of this late start plan or option that we already have planned. That's separate from a board decision. Yep, what I'm hearing.
Correct.
So I want to, for the record, piece out what we're actually saying, and since I think that there's this thought in the community that we're just throwing things out there. The only thing that I'm personally, based on the things before us, are asking for different is that we add the shuttle, which is one of our proposals here, that meets our resolution. So the 7th period we already have. The shuttle is the added piece to that, which we've talked about 4 different shuttles. One going to each school, 2 going to coming from the Woodinville area. And that now there could be an equity in that. So by there being a pilot program and possibly having a lottery, that could potentially be how we would alleviate that. And we're doing the E and A program, and I think that's awesome that you brought that up, because it sounds like we might have already worked out a lot of the transportation hiccups with already having been doing this regional type of mode, so we might know how to implement this better.
Yeah, those are different systems than this transit type system that's suggested on this. But yes, we have done.
How so?
Those are hub systems. So students come to a central hub and then are to a central place, and then are transported from that place to the EAP or the AAP site. This is more, as you see, a bus is going to, like an activity bus, is going to wander a general path through the service area, and students are going to have to find their way to that.
We do that with activity buses.
Yeah, we do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we have
it's a
some
very
system
common.
in place that we're modeling it after. It's not something brand new.
No, not at all.
It's brand new for this program that we're talking, or it's brand new for Late Start, but it's not a brand new way of doing it where we're just throwing something out there and trying it.
Not at all.
We're just adding a bus, and we're already doing 7 periods. And a model that we've already been doing.
Yeah. So where I think it's gotten a little confusing in a number of areas is that our desire to expand 7th period options has been about expanding opportunities for kids to take 7 classes. And so that has gotten conflated a little bit with this whole idea of it could also then allow students the opportunity to take a 2 through 7 schedule. And those are two different items. So I suppose to answer the equity question, and I don't know if it simplifies things or makes it more complicated, from a strictly equity standpoint, if we only did the morning shuttle, that would be equitable. Because in that sense, if a student starts their day 1st period, or if a student starts their day 2nd period, they still have the opportunity to have transportation provided. If they choose to go beyond 6th period day to take 7th period, they're going to have to find their way home. I'm not sure that in the name of equity that solves a problem or creates a problem, but
I don't believe that gives you the data you would be interested in seeing, though. I think what you would be interested in seeing is the people who are interested in taking that 2-7, and if you're denying them a way home.
I understand that. I was just trying to address what would be truly equitable. Would be, we can assure you, whether you're 1-7, 1-6, or 2-7, we can get you at least to school every morning. Unless you're taking a 0 period.
And I would consider that truly inequitable.
So that actually brings up another question, just trying to run a bus for 2nd period. And this was kind of an aha moment. Ryan, I want to bring you up here.
Sorry, I'm eating a snack.
Can you share? So could you synopsize, like in a minute, how transportation plans for the next, kind of the timeline of planning for the next school year.
Sure.
And I know that, I, again, just sort of woke up to the primary center thing, and I know that also would impact a second, I mean, we're trying to figure that out as well, so how that all is.
Sure, so currently, I would say, starting in January, we start meeting with our department heads, and we start doing what we call roll-ups. So we roll up, meet with the various departments and try to understand more about the changes that they're going to be anticipating for 2015. Part of that roll-up is to then take a look at how do we model this transportation program that we have. So, for example, as the high schools start looking at their scheduling, we start working with their principals or the instructional staff about what does this block schedule look like, what is your first period start, what is your last period start, etc. And then we start adding a little bit more information as we gather that. So we're running some type of draft right now, and then as we get more information, we start updating that so that by somewhere around May, June, we have kind of a complete plan that we know this is going to be the model. And then in the summer, we're trying to work on what that communication will look like as we model some of the changes. So we start communicating with the parents about these are your hubs. The pickup times are this time, the drop-off time is this time. The hubs will then transport to these schools. AEP is the same way. So that's some of the things that we are starting to look at as we go through this sort of modeling as we talk about.
So you're about halfway through, it sounds like?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just doing the
Yeah.
math.
So the other thing that we're also looking at, and part of what we're trying to get a better grip on, is our ordering of buses.
Mhm.
So as we go through this modeling, we need to understand how many buses do we have, how many buses do we need, because we need to start placing orders. So that's the biggest thing that we have. Special ed is always the question mark, because as the program changes or as kids need specific programs, we get a better understanding of where we're transporting them to. Okay, and their needs are based on, or the bus provided is going to be based on the type of needs they're required. So if it's a handicapped student, et cetera.
Okay. And I am embarrassed that I was not more aware, but we're basically opening up a new school this fall, and that you are putting in quite a bit of work to figure out the transportation for that.
Yes. So part of what we're working on is with Kathleen and the instructional folks is our kindergarten program. So we're looking at, we did an early registration this year, I believe it's January, we opened up the registration, and we're looking at the number of capacity from, first from a facility perspective, then how do we transport these kids either in a half-day or a full-day program.
So in addition to what we're talking about, you in your normal planning, you're also trying to figure out how to pull kids from all these different elementary schools to the kindergarten center, where you're taking them back to their home or hub, or, so that's an additional thing you're also planning out.
So the couple of unknowns that we're trying to work through right now is the, I want to say, primary center.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the kindergarten students at the primary center. The thing that we're working on right now is trying to get numbers, better numbers around the EAP programs. We know that is continuing to grow. The other thing that we're looking at is we know the North End is continuing to grow, and we have full buses up in that area. And then basically the fourth thing that I think would be the big unknown is the transportation needs for special ed.
Would you throw the AAP expansion to 8th grade in that
Yeah,
mix as well?
the AAP would be also another expansion program.
Thank you, that's really helpful to
Okay.
get a full picture of where this fits into all of that. Thank you. Further thoughts?
Illuminating, how do we proceed from here?
Someone makes a motion. Did you want to make a motion to put forward your shuttle idea?
I will make a motion to adopt number 4 on the right thing. I better get this
That was
right.
3.
It's
No, 3 for
for,
the E
Brian, I'm
one.
looking at Brian's.
Number 4.
No.
I would
It is,
go
don't look
directly
at
to
that.
the ESB page.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, look at the.
Okay, I'll
Oh,
go with the ESP.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt number
I'll
For
second that.
2015.
for 2015.
The high school regional metro idea.
I think same in second. Second, yeah.
Option 3.
Option 3 and option 3. Does the board have any additional discussion? That will be
I
for
recognize this is
2015.
pilot and does not include special ed, and that that's a very important group, and that our task force is looking at that we didn't have something before us that could tell how that could work. So, just want to state that.
Well, interesting that she brought it up. I would like to add special ed, but I thought I would do it after this discussion around that. Right now, I just want to see us do something.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to adopt number 3 for the 2015 school year. Any further discussion? No? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
I think you'll have to do voice voting.
Yeah, okay. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay? Nay. All right, motion carries 3-2. That is the second period and 7th period shuttle. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
And I would like to say, what's next on the agenda? Sorry.
Project acceptance.
Okay. It's related to these intermediate steps that we're going forward with. I brought up the inequity piece about special ed at the last meeting. And I would like us to entertain another pilot. I had considered before I saw Amy's pilot, and I said, okay, well, that's different from the one I had in mind. I would like us to consider piloting e-buses to go 2 to 7. But I can make that suggestion at the end after the next agenda item.
Is it a component of this discussion?
I think it is, but it isn't. I think it's perhaps a different pilot, or can be just seen that way.